Let's get into the latest Celtics trade news. Harrison Graham and Chase Sr. here on NBA Now by Chat Sports. Regarding the Boston Celtics, Evan Fournier heading to Boston on a trade here, only giving up a pair of second-round picks, Chase.
I think Danny Ainge won this trade clearly. The Orlando Magic are selling. They're giving away all of their marquee players, Evan Fournier being one of them. And for Boston to bring in Fournier for 2 second-round picks, that's a really good deal for Boston. Fournier is a player who's kind of been hidden in Orlando the last several years. He's averaged at least 15 points the last 6 seasons. So what he brings to the Celtics team, he's a dynamic, versatile player who can play on the wing as a guard. He can play a little small forward as well. Last night in his last game with the Magic, he hit a game winner against the Phoenix Suns. So he can shoot it from the outside. He can create off the dribble. And when you watch the Celtics this year, they've kind of been lacking that type of player. Kemba Walker isn't the same player because of that knee injury. So Fournier will be able to spell Walker in a playmaking standpoint. And again, when you give up 2 second-round picks, that's a win for Danny Ainge and the Celtics.
I think it's an absolute steal. Now, look, I still think the biggest need for Boston is and was, and we'll see if that gets addressed, was the big position. But to get a 20-point scorer without giving up a first-round pick, that's a good move for Boston. That gives you more wing depth. That gives you more playmaking, like you said. And he plugs in as your number 3 scorer, essentially, behind Jaylen Brown, behind Jason Tatum. He's a rental. We'll see what his long-term diagnosis is with Boston or elsewhere. Maybe they work on a contract extension, but I think this is a steal. I think it's good value for Boston, and I think what it does too, his contract's about $17 million.
Yep.
So the trade exception of 28.5, assuming that's what's being used here, which I think it has to be with no player going back, they still have $11 million on that exception alone, and that doesn't even include like if they trade a Marcus Smart or something like that.
Right.
So they're still in play for making a bigger trade if they choose to do so. So I think it's good value. I think he'll help their offense, and Boston needed to do something, and this is doing something.
So, yeah, say if you're the Celtics, Fournier walks after this season. You only gave up 2 second-round picks, so it's not like you're losing a ton. He signed a 5-year, $85 million contract prior to the 2016-17 year. So he's due $17 million this year, set to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. You can either re-sign him or you lose 2 second-round picks if not.
So grade the trade, A, B, C, D, or F. I'm going to give it a B+, A-. I think it's a very, very low-risk move for potentially a pretty high reward for Boston.
Yeah, I'm going to go B. I don't think this is anything that totally changes the course of the Celtics season. I still think they have some problems. I would have liked to have seen Boston address the front court and bring in a player like Vucevic. I think that could have just totally changed the Celtics' playoff and title contending hopes. But when you look at Evan Fournier's numbers, he's a really solid player. I mean, he's averaging nearly 20 points per game. He can chuck it from deep. He can create off the dribble. He can space the floor. He's a dynamic player at the end of the shot clock and at the end of games. And when you pair him alongside guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Evan Fournier slides in nicely to that lineup. I'm going to be interested to see what Brad Stevens does with that starting lineup. Does he put Fournier in as a starter, or does he bring him off the bench as a super six-man spark plug? That's what I'm kind of looking at.
I think they've had some depth issues, too, because that starting 5, when fully healthy, of Kemba, Brown, Tatum, insert center plus Marcus Smart when he's healthy is pretty good, but then you're like, where does the scoring come from?
Right.
From the bench.
Yeah.
Maybe they view Fournier as a 28, 30-minute come-off-the-bench guy and light it up. So we'll see where he kind of fits into Brad Stevens' system there, but I do think overall it's a good move. Not the best move they could have done, but value-wise, a pretty good move overall. Subscribe to our Boston Celtics Today channel. You see the link on screen. It's youtube.com/CelticsTV. If you're watching our NBA trade coverage live on YouTube, then go check that out if you want more Boston Celtics news and rumors. If you're watching on our Celtics channel, well, just hit that big red button and subscribe. Chase, myself, the whole Chat Sports team will keep you guys updated on the latest surrounding the Boston Celtics. So you kind of look at, okay, where does Fournier fit? Starter, 6-man, we'll see. He's your number 3 scorer now, though, based on production this year after Tatum and Brown. And while it's not a top positional need, in my opinion, it's still a good value move here at the end of the day.
You're looking at this leading scorer list right now, and you're like, wow, the Celtics have a lot of firepower. Unfortunately for Boston, after these 5 players, they don't have much. But Hey, I think this helps the Celtics a lot. I think they needed a guy who is going to be able to come in, preferably off the bench, and create plays, but also score the basketball in bunches. And I think that's what Fournier is able to do. When you look at the trade, yeah, I mean, 2 second-round picks for Boston giving up, it's really not much in the grand scheme of things. What I'm worried about is the Celtics front court because you have Daniel Tice, you have Tristan Thompson. I still think there's a huge void in the front court for this Celtics team. I think, and I've said that's the biggest need for this team. Fournier, it's certainly a boost, and I think it helps them out a lot. I'm not sure it turns them into an Eastern Conference finalist contender, but it is a solid deal for this team.
Should the Celtics make more trades? They've already added Fournier. Type Y for yes, type N for no. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Should the Celtics make another move or two? Now, one player they did not get is Nikola Vucevic, who heads to Chicago. We'll kind of focus on the Bulls thing later, but let's focus on the Celtics side of this, Chase. They don't land Vucevic, who the Bulls just kind of quietly snuck in here and added him. I know he's a player you really liked for Boston.
Loved his fit, loved his game for Boston because he is a do-it-all big man who can play with his back to the basket. He can post up from the elbow, but he can also stretch the floor as well because he's an elite three-point shooter given his size.
He's having a career year.
He's having a career year, and sneakily, Vucevic has put together like 5 to 7 consecutive elite seasons, and he's putting together a Hall of Fame case if he continues to put up numbers like he's been over the last several seasons. And the Celtics could have given up a package similar to what the Bulls had given up. Plus, they have that trade exception. So I'm actually surprised that Boston didn't pull the trigger because when you look at Vucevic's numbers and you put him into that starting lineup, given the glaring need that the Celtics have in the front court, given what he could give to that offense, I think that it would really make things interesting in the Eastern Conference. So if you ask me, I think the Boston Celtics missed out by not going after Vucevic because the size, the fit, the versatility, the game. I think Brad Stevens and the offensive system that he runs would find a way to plug Vucevic into that lineup, and they would really become a lethal offense. Instead, you bring in Fournier. That's a secondary or third option, and by bringing in Fournier, you're ignoring that front court void and that front court need for me.
Yeah, we'll see if Boston makes a move for another big, gets involved in the buyout market. They get Evan Fournier, but they miss out on Nikola Vucevic, who's heading to the Chicago Bulls. Now, if you're watching this on our Celtics channel, go to our main Chat Sports YouTube channel because we're live breaking down every move during the NBA trade deadline. Obviously, if you're watching us live on Chat Sports, subscribe. Help us out. We're closing in on 237,000 subscribers. We can only get there with your help, so go ahead and hit that big red button.